For coming in today. Welcome. This is Politically Deconstructing with myself, Kass, and my lovely co-host, Miss Lady Google. Today, we are going to be talking about the viral claims being made by Sascha Riley in regard to the Epstein files and Donald Trump and a couple of other pretty high-profile political people.
Yeah, there's some big names out there with this.
Oh yeah, what do we have? Jim Jordan.
Andy Biggs,
Yeah, we.
Lindsey Graham, Clarence Thomas.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I
There's,
I want to
did we
start.
did we say Jim Jordan?
Yeah. I think he was the first one I mentioned. What I want to sort of drive home here is that this is in no way an attempt to invalidate a victim, but when you are reviewing media, you have to review it critically. And this is what we're going to be talking about today in regard to the specifics here. And I don't know, I think it would be good to share sort of why we started doing this podcast. I want to let Google go first because I think it's important to talk about the goals we have here.
Yeah, so for me, the reason Cass and I are doing this, I think some of you that know me know that I said that I feel very politically homeless. Like I don't feel represented by the left or the right. I feel like we've just kind of gotten caught up in an us versus them. And the reason for me that I wanted to and agreed to the name politically deconstructing is because I want to like deconstruct this idea that it is us versus them. It's the left versus the right. And there's so many topics that we get caught up on partisan type issues that shouldn't even be political. Like they should be common sense. And I feel like there's more of us in the middle than there are on either side. Like
Absolutely.
I feel like we have more in common than we don't. And I want to deconstruct some of that and get us back to some common sense, middle of the road area.
I agree. I think for me, a big part of this is that I get very frustrated. We had talked about it previously in like our own personal conversations when it's sort of like a pendulum swing, you know, you had a great phrasing about it. And I even told you to write it down. Like, it's like the any claim about Trump made to Republicans, I
It
think if
was a,
you.
yeah, there is no bridge too far that Trump can do that MAGA will turn on him or stop supporting him. And there is no bridge too far of claims against Trump that Democrats won't take as gospel to further prove how terrible he is.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it. Like I already have enough reasons to believe like Trump stinks. I'm very politically homeless. Like in that regard, it's a nonpartisan factor for me. I'm not heavily invested in Democrats winning. I personally find them sometimes better than Trump. But at the end of the day, all I want from this is that people feel more literate about the information that they are facing. We are in a 24-hour media cycle, social media cycle, and basically now with Substack, apparently truth tellers cycle, and we don't have transparency in the government. We don't have transparency in news. So if collectively we can get together and critically think about these things, I think it's going to serve us a lot better.
I agree.
So let's talk about this
Oh
because
my goodness, I don't even like where do we even start? There's so much.
I really think straight out the gate, and I'll just put it out there with my whole chest. There's a thing called Hitchens razor, right? Which is claims that can be made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And then there's also the Sagan principle, which is extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And Google, you took extensive notes. She's so much, but like she's so organized, and I love her for that. About some of this, and I'm wondering, what are some of these very extraordinary claims?
Oh boy. So many. Like First of all, he's claiming that he was trafficked from 1978 until about 1986. Now, I will say that some of the stories that he's telling seem to circle around like 1982 era is what I got from this, especially some of like there were two particular instances where he talks about Donald Trump extensively. One with the unaliving of a litter of puppies, and then one for me that really like solidified probably the point where I'm like, okay, I'm no longer being fully transparent. Like I'm no longer taking this at face value anymore because it was so outlandish that I didn't buy it. And that was that he put a wooden stake up Donald Trump's backside and kicked it. And that Donald Trump was so severely injured that he was, his words, life lifted out of the party.
Yeah, that is certainly an incredibly, like, I feel like Donald Trump has been fairly high profile his entire life.
And
And
even in the early 80s, he
yeah,
was a well-known like playboy, entrepreneur, real estate agent. Like, how are you going to cover up a medevac flight? But on top of that, when you listen to the second 1 hour long audio, he again recounts this story, but there is no longer mention of Donald Trump being medevaced out. Now the claim is, well, they had to get him out of there because he was so severely hurt. And I want to like point out that I've like watched other creators that bring in the fact that Donald Trump was visiting a gastroenterologist since, the mid 80s. Okay, that does not prove or disprove that he's got these bowel problems because IBS can land you at a gastroenterologist.
well, yeah, it's sort of like you're proving maybe some correlation, but not some
Not causation.
causation there. And see, that's the thing. I think when you dissect these videos, and you had said this earlier, and I think you're absolutely correct that like there are elements of truth to it,
Mm-hmm.
but there are elements that can be very, and it's not to say that this is unfactual. It's just to say that based on the totality of what we have right now,
Right.
bro, like I wouldn't run with this. You need to be careful and critical about media that you're evaluating. This is fucking audio recordings. I could go do an audio recording with Google questioning me and claim I'm the Queen of England. It don't make it true. That's
Well,
how
and
that works.
I want to point out that the chats seem to think that we're somehow claiming that these stories or that this testimony story is accurate, and we're actually kind of doing exactly the opposite. Like we're kind of in our own way disproving it or saying why we're not willing to shout it from the rooftops. And that's, we are not a bunch of Karens up here saying we believe it. We kind of don't.
Yeah, I'm gonna say like based on what I have right now, I would be about 85 to 90% on just calling it absolute bullshit.
I,
I think this is bullshit that is getting into the media that people are running with wild claims that they have no current ability to validate. I wanted to actually talk about that. That brings me into another point, Googs. So this is one thing I had posed to you earlier, like when we sort of had a conversation about this. Why is no major news outlet picking this up? Especially if these were recorded, what was it, back in like June or something like that?
June, and it was released on her Substack in November, but these were
Yeah.
recorded in June and July.
Yeah, and that's my thing. So we have this like it's been out here for a while, and who is this person that's reporting it is my
A
bigger
Canadian,
question.
like
Like,
a Canadian who doesn't really do this kind of journalism. Like there's not
no.
even a real clear, her expression on how she met this person was she met him and thought he needed help, so she offered help because that's what she does. There's a lot of things that just don't make sense to me.
Yeah, and let's kind of like talk about a little bit, like you had brought up some really interesting points about the timeline, like who these people being accused in these claims. Like we have specific accusations
We
against Jim
do.
Jordan, Lindsey Graham, Andy Biggs, a few others,
Yeah.
and some of the timelines just don't work out with what's being proposed.
Right. So I'll go through that real quick. So like
Sure.
Lindsey Graham. Sascha Riley claims that Lindsey Graham was at some of these parties. He's not claiming that Lindsey Graham assaulted him, but that Lindsey Graham was traveling in this circle and was around when these things were happening.
Yeah.
So let's go through the timeline because I'm pretty sure, based on the audio of what he said, not anything else, based on strictly the audio recordings, it was about 1982, 83 that he's claiming that this incident with Trump happened, which he's also claiming was about the end of his trafficking. So Lindsey Graham joined the Air Force in 1982. And from 82 to 84, he was stationed in South Carolina. Let's be real about that.
Yeah.
When you're newly enlisted, you're not getting off base to go attend wild sex parties. Let's just call it what the fuck it is. And then from 84 to 88, he was in Germany, stationed in Germany as a chief prosecutor.
Sorry,
So,
guys.
like, we can reasonably say from 82 to 88, that dude was not available to participate in some of this shit. And on top of that, he wasn't even like a well-known figure yet. He didn't have the notoriety that Lindsey Graham has now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was curious, do you know, does Lindsey Graham come from any sort of like political family, notable family? I don't believe Biggs does. I don't believe Jordan does. I'm unsure about Graham.
I really can't answer that because honestly, like
Sure.
once I read into his military record and saw what he was, and he was an attorney in the military, so I'm assuming before that he was probably in law school.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's my assessment based on the fact that by 84 he was a chief prosecutor in Germany. So, deductive reasoning, right? Like taking the
Yeah.
facts that we can. So then Andy Biggs, let's talk about him. Andy Biggs supposedly assaulted this person. Andy Biggs was like, he was attending Brigham Young University in 1982. And then in 1984, he was attending the University of Arizona getting his JD. So
Yeah.
again, like college student, not somebody that traveled in political type circles, not a big name yet. Where would he have gotten access to Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump to be invited to these kind of parties? Like these things don't make sense in the timeline.
And that's another thing I wanted to go over is like some of the people he's naming, they didn't go to like Harvard, Yale, things like that. We're not talking about colleges with some deep history of like skull and bones or things like, and even that is still highly like, like it's controversial and unconfirmed. But we're talking about people who went to like fucking Brigham Young, like
Brigham
these
Young
are
and
not,
the University of Arizona.
Yeah.
So then, like, I want to bring up Clarence Thomas for a minute because this was interesting. Here's where the timeline really falls apart for me in some of what they're saying. He's saying that he remembers specifically Clarence Thomas being at some of these parties, and the reason it was so notable is because there weren't very many people of color that hung out in this circle or came to these parties. So Clarence Thomas was very notable to be there because of his skin color. This is his testimony, not mine. He was an assistant secretary of civil rights from 81 to 82. He was an EEOC chairman from 82 to 90, and he didn't get nominated for the Supreme Court until 91. And the reason I bring up the nomination of the Supreme Court is one of the things that Sascha Riley says is he remembers how excited his dad was that Clarence Thomas got nominated for the Supreme Court. And that was a big deal to his dad because that meant that somebody that they traveled in the same circle with had made it all the way to the Supreme Court. That was 1991. Like a lot of his claims took place in like 81 82, so he would have been grown and claims to have been out of his parents' care, his adoptive parents' care by then. So how would he have been around to know how excited his dad was in 91 that Clarence Thomas was making the Supreme Court?
Yeah, that's the bigger issue that came up for me over and over again is sort of this like conflicting timeline. Like I will say like I'm gonna go in and try to find actual like written transcripts of the vids because it's much easier for me to go through it
Well,
that way. But at least it's sort of like these jumping timelines, conflicting statements kind of thing, right? Like
speaking of the transcripts, wasn't there something you picked up on about Maxwell that where the transcripts didn't mix match, but you heard it in
oh,
the audio?
okay, yeah. So he's talking about his mother being overly concerned with getting Ghislaine Maxwell's name correct. Now, I want to point this out from what we know. Ghislaine Maxwell did not meet Epstein until the 90s. So and you're talking about this sort of timeline where he was trafficked.
78 to
Yeah.
quote unquote 86
Yeah,
is
and
the
then
dates he gave, but
well then he supposedly cuts off all contact with the parents. Epstein doesn't even meet Maxwell until the 90s. So that timeline does not fit across. And it's not a like, I want to be so clear. I don't want to invalidate anybody because wild shit absolutely sometimes turns out to be true, but
right.
I'm gonna hold people's hands when I say this. This is starting to smell like the Democrat version of Pizzagate. Just to be so real, based
It
on
feels
what
like
I have
Democrat
right now.
QAnon to me.
Yeah.
And to the people that are saying that we're like not believing victims and invalidating victims, I can only speak for myself. I am a victim of sexual assault. I am a victim that also understands that I could not in any way, shape, or form prove my claims in a court of law. I have zero evidence that anything happened to me other than my own experience. So please understand that when I went into this, I do believe victims. I want to believe victims, and I always go in this with a trust but verify. And as someone that could not possibly prove their own claims, I know what it's like to make claims to have no corroborating evidence.
No, WC, no, I'm sorry. I'm not even going to do that.
No,
No claims have been investigated by
that's
journalists. Let's be
that's
so
the point.
clear. I covered this at the beginning of this, and I'm going to say it again. No major news has picked up this story. This is literal audio files between some unknown lady and this guy. This is not verified by even independent journalists at this point. This is claims. We're talking about claims.
Right. And he has made the claim that there are police reports. That he has made the claim that there are CPS reports. He made the claim that he went to a police station in Oklahoma and reported to the police himself that he unalived one of these girls and that they did not follow up with an investigation and let him walk after. You tell me when in history you can walk into a police station, sit down in an interrogation room, tell an investigator, I, with my bare hands, unalived somebody, and they're going to let you walk out and do no investigation whatsoever. I'm literally going with like cognitive thinking skills based on the testimony of his own audio. Those things don't make sense. And if you think that we sound like, all the men that dismiss us, like, I'm sorry for you. I don't dismiss women and I don't dismiss victims. But I am a logical fucking thinking human.
Listen, I won't, I will say that timelines don't add up to the extent that like claims that are being made could absolutely not have occurred because those people were not even known in that ecosphere at all during the timeline he's giving. That's why things are not meshing or matching. And I don't really care if you like it or not. Like, you have to be willing to call bullshit. And I'm calling bullshit. If I get some, like, we have a lot of audio tapes. You know what we don't have? Any actual fucking evidence. Actual evidence of police reports, any of the FOIA requests that she claimed in her little thing could be made. Why not?
And what we
Why not?
actually have is a statement from her. We have a statement from her saying, like, we don't need any of those things because you have to believe the victim, and the victim is the only testimony we need. But I want to go back to the people that he's named
Yes.
again. Can we just, like, I'm going to go, the last one I really have is Jim Jordan. And Jim Jordan is a whole bag of dicks. And if you think I would
Yeah.
ever think that I would be up here defending Jim Jordan, never. But Jim Jordan was literally in high school in 1982. He went to the University of Wisconsin where he wrestled. He was an athlete from 82 to 86. And then he got an assistant wrestling coach position at Ohio State in 1987, where I will give you, he worked with that, I don't remember the doctor's name off the top of my head, who was accused of assaulting all of those student athletes. And it was reported that the athletes said that they had reported to Jim Jordan and that he didn't tell. So I'm not saying that he doesn't have some ties to some shady shit and some victims. Like, he absolutely does. But in the timeline that Sascha Riley mentions him, he was a high school student and a college athlete.
Well, I guess the bigger question comes up for me on this end, right? Like, if I'm looking at this objectively, Jim Jordan, somebody invited a Trump, right? Or Trump
Right.
associates
Trump or Epstein
invited
or somebody
what?
in that
Yeah,
world
invited some random high schooler to a
to
sex
come
party.
assault, right, to come
That's the
assault
claim.
kids at a high profile, a low key but high profile sex party, where the claim was made that, like, they put up big tents and hired in bands to perform while they were assaulting children and having illegal fights.
Yeah, like I again, like, I will not assert that evidence can't be pulled for this. The only thing I'm saying is we absolutely have to be able to view this critically and understand that extraordinary claims absolutely require extraordinary evidence. That's just all there is to it.
Well, and they're saying in the chats, and I know we said we weren't going to do this, but they're saying, well, he claimed that Jim Jordan was only a couple years older. I hear you. I hear you, but you tell me how Jim Jordan, a high school wrestler and a college wrestler, got invited to these kind of parties. How did he get that invitation? Why would he have gotten that invitation?
In Annie, I feel you, but lie detector tests aren't submissible in court. But like, they're submittable in court. But at the same time, it's irrelevant at this point. All I have are some audio files. I want documents. They've even made the claim that documents are available. Why are the documents not released? That's going to be my bigger question here. I feel like that's a reasonable ask if you're asking me to believe a claim. Like, if you're putting out an extraordinary claim and you're wanting me to believe it, and you know that there's verifiable documentation you can release alongside with it, I don't see what the problem is in wanting that in order to verify the veracity of your claim. I don't know why this is complex.
I don't either. Like, I guess for me, the reason I even wanted to dig into this and why we're even talking about it, because personally, I wouldn't normally give this air because, like you, I feel this is very like Pizzagate Democrat version.
Mhm.
The reason I guess I'm even willing to dig into it and was willing to listen was because so many of my friends on this app feel so strongly about this particular victim. And I wanted to give it the care and concern that I thought it was due for their feelings. But the more I listened, the more I dug into the information we do have versus the information they claim is out there that we don't have. And really like digging into the timeline, nothing adds up for me. When I say I trust but verify, I'm unable to verify in his own testimony, his own audio recordings don't make sense.
I mean, I think that there are elements of truth to it. Like I'm not going to discount that there are
I
elements of
believe that
truth
he
in that.
was I believe that he was sexually abused. I believe that his father may have trafficked him in some way. Like it's possible. I We know that he really was the mental health facility he claims he was in 1989 did in fact exist in the area of the country where he claims it existed, where he claims he mentioned Donald Trump by name for the first time. There are absolutely elements of truth to this.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
I
the
don't,
claim. The claim is his father worked for E, but let's talk about that for a minute. Okay, so he claims that he was trafficked from 78 to around 86. Jeffrey Epstein didn't make his first $1 million until 1984.
that was what I was, sorry, I was trying to
Like,
remember that, yeah, in my head, but
yeah,
yeah,
he
that's
didn't
accurate.
make his first $1 million until 1984 when he became a headhunter. Like he was like some kind of broker, and then he became a headhunter for really rich people going after money that had been stolen from him. He made his first million in 1984. Now, I will tell you that going from a millionaire to like a billionaire in a really short amount of time, that's fucking wild, right? Like clearly there was some shady shit going on. I understand that Epstein was doing what the fuck Epstein was doing. But I don't know that Epstein and Ghislaine, especially when we go back to like talking about she didn't meet him until 91. But this victim who said he was trafficked from 78 to 86 involved her in his claims and Epstein in his claims when those people weren't even in that circle until later.
That part. That's the whole part. That's the whole part. If timelines are not are an impossibility, right? Like timelines are a known impossibility in the claim that's being made and matching up. You have to be willing to at least consider that. I'm not telling you not to believe them. I'm not even telling you to throw it out. I'm telling you to be critical of the information you are evaluating. And I get it. I get the concept that our government has zero transparency right now. And it is very, very easy to get into circles. Our media has limited transparency. We are living in the shittiest timeline on earth right now. I want it. I want to like, I don't know. We need a Mandela effect that completely changes this timeline or something. But I get that it's very easy to feel like, okay, well, he did this other stuff. He must have done this stuff. But again, that's where the critical evaluation comes in. And if you're finding timelines that are impossible, you have to be willing to consider that something is amiss here. That's all I'm saying.
And And to the people that are claiming that we're defending P3DOs, no, we're not. Like, listen, when it comes to any of these people, I have enough evidence to tell you that they're all shitbags. Every single one of them. I wouldn't trust any of them around my kids. I think that they're all terrible fucking humans. And adding one more thing onto the pile of evidence that they're shitty human beings doesn't make them any shittier. They're shitty already. So I have plenty of substantiated claims and things I can prove to make them terrible fucking people without needing to go and, blast a
I'll tell you, all I needed to know was that Donald Trump assaulted E. Jean Carroll. I have no, like, I already know.
He was adjudicated.
All I need to know is that Donald Trump, at least at the bare minimum, facilitated a riot on the Capitol. These are all things I already know. I don't need unverified shit to make my claim any better that he sucks. Like, that's all there is to it.
So, yeah, there's just I'm like you 85 to 90% sure that I smell way too much bullshit. I'm not claiming that he's not a victim. I'm not claiming any of that. I'm claiming that the names that were dropped in the sequence that he dropped them in, the timeline that he dropped them in, they don't make sense.
I mean, I will say this. Wild shit sometimes turns out to be true. Like, truth is
Right.
better than fiction sometimes. And
Which
I
is why
can't I cannot completely discount it, nor will I completely throw it out. But I think like we really have to make a concentrated effort to critically evaluate information. Like I would say this if the shoe were on the other foot, and let's say this is a Biden accusation, this is a any politician I like accusation, I would look at it this with the same critical factors.
I want to bring up one more thing. And this was one that like really like stuck for me. So he claims that Donald Trump was kind of the ringleader, right? Like it wasn't actually Epstein. It was Donald Trump that was, in his mind, the
Okay.
bigger of the everybody kind of worked under him. Now, let's take his claim of him self-admittingly trying to unalive Donald Trump.
Sure.
He says that he did what he did. He put the thing where he put the thing. He kicked
Yeah.
the thing where he kicked the thing, and that it really, really fucked Donald Trump up.
Sure.
And he claims that he was allowed, him and his father were allowed to leave. Now, this is also after making multiple claims that he had watched multiple girls get pew-pewed in front of him, strangled, tortured, beaten until they unalived. All of these things were claimed. But you mean to tell me that this child, this 13-year-old child was allowed to assault Donald Trump to the point that he had to be, even if not medevaced out, taken to the hospital, and they were allowed to leave. And then at a later date, they were asked to come back so that they could receive their punishment, where this child was beaten repeatedly by groups of people. They went from area to area to area where this child was beaten. And then when the father stepped in and said, no, he can't take anymore, you're going to unalive him, they said, well, we haven't gotten our revenge yet, so you're going to have to take the beating. And the dad steps in and takes the rest of the beating. But they unalived people for sport. But you're telling me you believe that he was allowed to assault Donald Trump to that level and allowed to leave with a later date consequence?
Uh, and yeah, and that doesn't make it. And you know, something just hit me when you were talking about things that didn't add up for me. We had talked earlier about the claim about being in the behavioral center, and that behavioral center did exist, right? So he was admitted by his parents, correct, to this hospital.
Yes.
So I'm just going to throw this out here. Logical reasoning for everybody in the chat. If you are sex trafficking a child, right? Like you adopted this child with that specific intent. Why would you put yourself in that position where that child can tell that hospital that they are staying in? Like they're not coming home to you. They're not just going to a therapist and coming
Right.
home to
It's a
you. No,
residential facility.
that's a whole hospital they're staying in. Why would you do that? I mean, just
You're
follow
giving
that
the
line of
victim
logic.
access to report you on
And
purpose.
you could also, well, I know there's a timeline issue here, but it cuts off a revenue stream if the trafficking would have continued. But either way, I'm
Well,
just
I
saying it's
mean,
odd.
the
It's
timeline stream, it was 1989 when he claims he was in the residential facility. He was done being trafficked, according to him, by 86. So this would have been
okay.
3 years
That's yeah.
later. And they said that his parents put him in there because they claimed that he was doing illegal substances, which he claims he was not doing. But again, like your point, which we discussed, So, without getting real personal, I have someone in my life who had children that lost their father. Those children needed to go to therapy. The mother refused to take the children to therapy because she didn't want the kids to talk to the therapist about the things that went on in their home because she could be verbally abusive. I wouldn't say she's physically abusive, but her parenting styles are definitely questionable. But she wouldn't put her own children into therapy for the loss of their father at a young age because she was scared of what they would say about her. And you're telling me that these people who adopted this child strictly to traffic him and put him through these innumerous
And
terrible situations,
I
put
want to,
him in a
I
therapeutic.
want,
Go
I want to
ahead.
become clarificational here. People who make a business out of trafficking children are not your like what you would think of as a
Standard parent.
standard pedo. Like that's not going to be equivocal there. That's a, they're trying not to end up, that's the exact point, is that they are trying not to end up locked up. That's a business for them. They want to continue doing that business, and it's absolutely horrifying and disgusting, but I don't think that they would make it a point to hand somebody the keys to possibly put
Their
them away.
undoing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that's odd. That's just that's an odd thing for me. I found that very off, and I can't say it's unequivocally true. Again, this is just critical discussion. This is not believe, don't believe, you run with that however you want. But I felt like, at least from what I saw, you know, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, as well as claims that can be made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. I have a lot of claims. I have zero actual evidence. And that's my entire issue here. And I think we need to be critical and careful when we run with these things. That's just, it's all I can really
We
say.
have
Oh,
we
go
have a
ahead.
lot of people in the chats that are friendlies, right? Like people that know us, that spend time around us. If you guys think for 1 second that we didn't, or I didn't, I can't speak for Kass, but that I didn't know that this was going to be an unpopular topic to talk about and that my opinion was not going to make a lot of you happy, in a culture where we get canceled for everything, believe me, I knew that coming on here and having this discussion was not going to be easy, and it was going to make a lot of people really upset. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't actually really think what I'm up here claiming that I think. Now, I won't speak in absolutes. I won't say that it is not true. I will say, for me, it does not add up.
Yeah, well, just based on some of the timeline conflict alone, like I'm setting my bullshit meter at about 80 to 90%. However, I the truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. I won't sit here and say it's unequivocally false. I don't do that, and I won't do that. But I cannot deal with people proclaiming facts when they don't even have any documents, any physical evidence of any of this. Like, again, no major news networks have touched this. Trust me, and I can even say American media can be a little bit halted, right? Like, American media can feel pushed to not push these stories. I'm not making a claim about the Trump administration, but I think you get where I'm going. But nothing is barring Reuters, BBC, international news
Al
networks from picking
Jazeera.
this up. Nothing. Not a damn thing. And that's the problem.
Right. And according to him, this should be heavily documented. Police reports, CPS reports, his own testimony to the Oklahoma Police Department, military records where someone was court-martialed for having porn on their computer. That was also another interesting claim to me. I'm not
Yes.
saying that that didn't happen, but he would have been, like well into his like almost 30s by the time this court martial happened. But he claims that his officer in charge recognized him at 12 or 13 years old in these
Mhm.
videos and called him in to say, hey, we saw these videos and it looks like you. Like, did you make these movies?
Yeah.
I, there's,
I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's odd. That wasn't at least the claim
I
was
understand he
asked.
gave their
Yeah.
name and rank. I understand that. He gave the last four of their socials. I wasn't able to verify any of that, but he did give it. I'll give you that. It's in the audio.
Somebody's going to be real pissed if that turns out to not be true. That's all I'm going to say. Like, I think like you can't just roll in and do a FOIA request. You can't just roll in and grab these things. Those things take a while. You have to be able to wait. And like they had plenty of time. They recorded these in June-ish. They released them in November. All of this documentation could have been provided by the people who released the audio. And I think it's irresponsible to release this in the way that they did because it is the exact point because it causes controversy, because it starts fighting, because people like me and Googs are kind of like, well, I feel like this is a lot and you may need to like verify some of this. And then other people are very much, we're going to believe it and we don't need this. And then that's exactly what it causes controversy. It's just, to me, I'm going to be honest, it's probably just Democrat Pizzagate.
That's honestly where I'm at. Like again, I know we've said this over and over. We're not saying that this person is not a victim. I'm not claiming that. Kass is not claiming that. I'm saying that the names that have been dropped in the timeline that they were dropped based on the information I could verify on my own because the records that they claim exist have not been provided and I cannot find them anywhere, do not pass the smell test for me. They just don't.
So he's been telling his story since 2008. It has all been cross-referenced and verified. I will bring you up if you have a source to prove it. Show
Yeah,
me. I'll
if
wait.
you've got documented proof of any of this other than the claim itself, I would love to see it because believe me, we looked.
We'll wait. Anyway, okay, I think we got about 5 more minutes, so hurry up if you're gonna get up here and show us the news reporting on it, because I can't wait to hear it. But anyway, so you got anything else, Goose? Anything?
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I actually like to go to the media literacy part of this
Sure.
and believing sensational stories. And it just so happened that this morning on my local news site, a story was posted that I found very interesting based on the headline. The headline said, students are told that Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk cannot be used in a class assignment about who they admire. And I read that and I'm like, what the fuck? And I go to the comments first, like everybody. I go to the comments and the comments are fucking wild. Oh my God, this is what's wrong with schools. Liberals are brainwashing our kids. They don't want Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. I live in a very conservative area. But then I went like a normal human should, and I clicked on the story and I read the article. Turns out this classroom assignment was to talk about somebody that you admired, and it said explicitly you cannot use any political figure or any religious figure. It did not name Donald Trump. It did not name Charlie Kirk. It said we want you to focus on someone from your own life, somebody that you know. You cannot use a political figure or a religious figure for this assignment. But the headline of the article was Students are told they cannot use Donald Trump or Charlie Kirk as someone they admire in classroom assignment. Does that sound like a rage bait headline to you?
Yeah, it a little bit. And we get a lot of stuff like that. Like the media literacy, like running with headlines is cannon fodder. Like you'll often find that you'll open these and then you'll read a paragraph down and you'll be like, that's not what it says. It's kind of like when we had the whole thing running about the girl who was like, the MAGA side had that whole BS religious persecution with that full necky chick and everything. And like, you start actually reading the rubric for the discussion post assignment that she ended
Right.
up getting a 0 on. And you're like, this
She
was
didn't
a
follow the
psych.
directions.
No, yeah, this was a psych class. This was a psych class. You had to use verifiable evidence. You had to put in claims you could actually pass muster. And she wasn't even writing to the actual assignment, which I believe was something to the effect of like the effect of gender roles, not what you thought about people.
Right.
Like it totally didn't follow the assignment concept.
Right.
And though I know OU gave it a pass, I also think that they're a very conservative university, so take it for what it is, you know?
But like there's a comment right here that said a kid should be able to do anything they want. It's their opinion, not the school's. Except the teacher specifically said, I want you to pick someone from your own life, someone that you know that you admire. We don't want you to use political figures or religious figures, which probably was meant to exclude like their church pastor as
Yeah.
somebody that they admire. They wanted them to talk about their grandmother, their uncle, their father. Like, but to say that a kid should be able to do whatever they want, not if it doesn't fit the assignment. The teacher sets the parameters of the assignment, not the student. So sorry, that's a stupid argument.
Yeah, well, the person that said that they had verifiable proof did not request up. Did you have anything else you wanted to like cover on Sasha? Like, I feel like we've talked about some of the claims that are made. I'm going to reiterate this again for everybody. You can run with whatever you want to run with. I am not the thought police, right? All I can ask you to do is critically evaluate information that you have at the time. And I want to say this, and I want to be so clear. Carl Sagan, I'm going to run with this. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And I'll end with that. Googs, you got any final words?
Like my previous video said about the internal bleeding of the officer, I have a PhD in bullshit. I deal with bullshit all day long. I have a 1.6 million gallon lake of bullshit. And this bullshit seems like more bullshit than my lake of bullshit.
All right. Well, we love all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I will post this over onto our YouTube, so please go like and follow. Googs will post it onto hers as well as soon as I get in a Dropbox. So I love you all. Check our link trees and thank you for coming. Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.